President Trump is back at the White House after a whirlwind visit to Turkey for this year's NATO Leaders Summit. But he didn't get back without a little bit of drama with regards to his mode of transportation. Although the president flew to Turkey on the new Air Force One bridge aircraft that he recently acquired from Qatar and the Air Force upgraded at taxpayer expense to use as a presidential transport, he left Turkey aboard the older, iconic aircraft that's been used as Air Force One since the 1990s. The president has described this new Boeing 747-800 as a major upgrade to the decades-old planes that presidents have been flying around on since the George H.W. Bush administration. But there's some important differences between the new plane and the old plane. On the inside, those upgrades include lay-flat seats that give you massages, in-flight entertainment, and the sorts of creature comforts you'd see on a first-class airplane seat these days. But look outside for the real difference. Now, I've flown on Air Force One multiple times when representing the Independent as part of the White House press pool when the president has traveled to Florida or other places. And one thing I can tell you is reporters are told never take pictures of the underside of the plane. Thankfully, Deputy White House Chief of Staff Dan Scavino was helpful enough to post video to X showing the back of the older Air Force One aircraft. You see that? That is an AN/LO 204 Matador produced by BAE Systems. It's an infrared jammer used to protect the aircraft from man-portable and other surface-to-air missile systems. It uses infrared light to disrupt and confuse missiles that might be trying to home in on Air Force One's engines. The very back of the plane also features a dispenser for chaff and flares that can use heat and big blooms of strips of metal to confuse missiles as a last-ditch attempt at preventing an incoming strike. This plane doesn't have those. According to the New York Times, this is exactly why the president took his first half of the trip home in the old ride instead of his new shiny one. The Times reported that the change was made at the request of the Secret Service, who decided it was probably a good idea to have the president on board the plane with equipment that could keep him alive when flying relatively close to a country the U.S. is currently bombing. The president tried to claim that he was taking the older plane for nostalgic reasons, claiming on Truth Social that he was riding on it for old time's sake while the new plane visited RAF Mildenhall in the UK so troops there could get a look at it. When pressed on why he was switching aircraft, the president denied that there was any specific threat that would be behind the change in his travel plans. But he did offer this morbid joke when pressed by reporters aboard Air Force One on the way home.
Are you aware of any credible threat by Iran against Air Force One?
I have a threat all the time. I'm number one on their list before you. But if I go, you go. Right?
But was there a specific
so
threat today?
perhaps someday you want to change professions.
What's most ironic about this is it was all avoidable. When President Trump was first elected in 2016, he made a big show out of browbeating Boeing into accepting a fixed-price contract for new Air Force One aircraft. Boeing had already been well on its way to building 2 new ones from the ground up to replace the 1990s era planes that we're all familiar with. But President Trump, then the president-elect, didn't like how much that cost. So instead, the Air Force bought 2 already completed airliners from a Russian airline that had gone bankrupt and never picked up their planes. Boeing has been trying to convert those to military use for the past 8 years now. And this project isn't expected to be done until at least 2028 and maybe 2029. But experts tell me that had the president just left it alone, he'd have had his brand new planes safe to fly on anywhere in the world years ago.